Welcome to the Deck Lunch Series. Good job picking along the pizza. Today, we have Derek Wunderlich from Commander Pharmacy here to talk with us about corporate entrepreneurship. Please give a warm welcome to Derek.
Thank you, Mickey, for the introduction. And also thank you, Sarah, wherever you are, for originally giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Before I jump into the presentation, give you a little bit of background on myself. I recently graduated from University of Louisville's MBA program. Many of you might not be aware of this, but U of L actually has one of the best entrepreneurial programs in the country, frequently ranking in the top 20 or 25 depending on the year. While I didn't specialize in the entrepreneurial program, as a graduate assistant, I did have the opportunity to work with or study under many of the faculty that are making a lot of headway in the industry. One faculty member in particular, Dr. Garrett, taught me a lot about corporate entrepreneurship, and I wanted to share my own version of some of those lessons. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 4 things. First, we're going to get on the same page and define corporate entrepreneurship so we can discuss it more clearly. It's not an academic definition, so don't worry about it too much. Second, I'm going to make the case that corporate entrepreneurship is extremely important for the long-term success of any large corporation. Third, I'm going to do some introspection and examine Humana, see how we're performing historically and now, and even moving forward. And then finally, I'd like to give everybody some ideas of what they can do as managers and associates to improve the state of entrepreneurial innovation within their areas of work. All right. Basically, we can call entrepreneurship creating new business. There's a more technical definition than that, but I think that will work for our purposes. It comes in 3 main areas: corporate, private, social. Social. Private is what most people think of when they hear entrepreneurship. It's the Jeff Bezos, it's the Elon Musk going out and starting SpaceX. Social entrepreneurship occurs in not-for-profit organizations, so your Red Crosses or even your government bodies like NASA. And then corporate entrepreneurship is something that a lot of people don't discuss or even realize is going on, but it's a vital part of any business. For me, I like to think about corporate entrepreneurship as including 3 main things. One is innovation. It all starts there. Second is the willingness to take on risk, to take on endeavors that we know we might fail at. There's a reasonable expectation we may fail. And then finally, what distinguishes corporate entrepreneurship from innovation in general and innovation activities is that it's creating a new business, distinct from the organization that helped create it. Now, I understand some of this can be vague, so let me give you an example from the tech industry. In early 2000, MP3 players already existed, and some people were using them. But it wasn't until Apple released the iPod in October 2001, I'm fact checking on that, that the market really took off. However, the iPod wasn't just a new product. It was really a new business because along with it came the strategy, came the service in the way of iTunes, and the physical product. And in that way, Apple was able to really launch successfully a new business, making it more like corporate entrepreneurship than just new product development. Continuing along this path, we say, okay, if that's corporate entrepreneurship, then what might just be product innovation? Continuing again with the iPods, eventually they evolved into iPod Nanos, iPod Airs. That's more of an evolution of an existing product in the category, and sure, it served a niche market, each of them did, but it's not really the same thing as a whole So there's my take on corporate entrepreneurship as a definition. Behind me, you'll see a very common maturity model. Frequently, it gets applied to products or services that they get introduced to a market, they experience a growth phase, they mature, especially if the market gets saturated, and then potentially either enter a decline phase or they have to be reinvented, retooled in order to keep growing. Frequently, this gets applied to an individual product or service or something along those lines. But I'm going to take a step back and say, maybe we can apply it to an entire business. And when I say business, don't conflate that with Humana as a corporation, right? There are distinct businesses that Humana as a corporation serves. So we apply this model to an individual business within a corporation, and we can say probably that there's an introduction period, there's a period of growth, there's a maturity phase, and then you reach a crisis point where you have to decide if you're going to let that business slide into a declining phase or if you're going to reinvent it. From a corporate perspective, this is important for two reasons. One, we have to make sure we're on all the segments to keep reinventing themselves if we want them to stay alive. And two, we want to also create new businesses in case that's not possible. Entirely new businesses that can have their own distinct introduction, growth, and maturity phases. This actually ties into a lot of research that's gone on at U of L, where they looked at the successes of large corporations, this is a big data pool, and asking, okay, based off of our findings in their 10K finals, their SEC finals, are they entrepreneurial or not? And when U of L professors examined this, they found that usually companies that were more entrepreneurial continued to be successful, and ones that were concerned, especially in declining markets, they wanted to hold back and not innovate or try and create new businesses, were really ultimately doomed to failure. So at this point, I'm going to have a tale of two companies. One is Garmin, and the other is TomTom. Both of them are known for their GPS services and navigation. At one point, they were the two best products you could get if you wanted to drive from point A to point B and have in-car navigation services. In 2007 timeframe, when the iPhone was getting its map guiding services and Android phones were, it was at the beginning of all that era, the markets realized that Garmin and TomTom weren't very well positioned. What happens when a smartphone is duplicating an existing device? Nobody's going to get rid of their smartphones that can do all these other activities, but suddenly Garmin and TomTom have disposable devices. Today, TomTom is trading for about a quarter of the value we used to trade for this tipping point. A quarter of the value. And that's only because they're about to be bought. Otherwise, they'd be closer to a tenth of the value. Garmin, however, is actually doing pretty well. They're trading for about what they did before all this came about. It's not exactly growing, true, but they were able to save themselves by looking at new business areas and opportunities. For instance, I'm wearing a Garmin watch. TomTom makes watches too, but they followed into that afterwards, almost as an afterthought. So there is some advantage going out there and creating new business even before the market forces you to do it, to be proactive. As another tale, almost on the positive end, of how you can learn through failure to create a new business, last week, Christine Mullins was here giving a presentation. She talked about Jeff Bezos and their failure to launch the Fire Phone product, right? However, it wasn't entirely a failure. Amazon took on all that corporate knowledge that came about from the product now making it in the marketplace, and they used that. They pivoted away and they thought, what if we create a home device that's serving a different need? They were able to leverage that knowledge we're going to talk about Humana and entrepreneurship here. It goes without saying that Humana was founded by entrepreneurs. Probably say that about any company because they wouldn't exist, right? A couple of years ago, David Abrams came to U of L and gave a presentation on how to be a successful entrepreneur. So I expected success to be a major theme of that presentation. Maybe strategies or managerial insights. That wasn't the case at all. He spent almost the entire time talking about failure. He failed doing this, he failed doing that. He and Wendell failed doing this other thing. But he was always able to take the lessons learned and apply them to another area. And importantly, he had the grit and determination to continue on even after the failures. So it's not just that Humana was founded by risk takers, by entrepreneurs. It was founded by failures. I think that's important that we keep in mind failure isn't always a negative thing. Looking forward, this is a slide I adapted from a presentation given by Jim Murray to the Young Professionals group at Humana in December. Now the merger isn't going through, but there's some things that I think still apply. Over here in the black and gray, you'll see the results of a survey asking employees and executives how they saw Humana and Aetna on a scale of cautious to risk alarm. The gray and black represent pre-merger, and the blue and green represent how employees and executives expected things to be after the merger went through. You can take a lot of different things from this slide and see it however you want. The way I choose to see it is as a company filled with people willing to accept more risk. They see the state of how it is right now, and even though they don't mean to do it necessarily in the surveys, in the future they envision we're going to be more risk allowed. Accepting risk is an important part of being entrepreneurial. So we have a history of entrepreneurship and taking on risk, and apparently we still have the desire to do the same. But what about motivating people, especially younger associates, to take on these risks? Many of you have heard of the STAR Awards, North, Guiding, Shining, I don't think in that order, but they're awards for obtaining efforts, usually in a dollar value, $200 to $5,000. But when you read the criteria for getting one of these, you'll realize that they say things like, achieve this business success, had these results, save money, grew profit. It makes sense at first glance that you want to reward success. The problem with that is it encourages people to pursue only activities which will lead to success. Entrepreneurship can't tell us that. We can't know if a business we want to launch or a product we want to launch is going to be successful. So how do you encourage managers, directors, VPs to delve into new areas if from the time they came into the corporation as associates, they're taught that we only reward success. We're only focused on the final outcome. So a little bit of an area where there seems to be some disagreement in what we want and what our actions say. How can we change this? How can we continue to progress and be an entrepreneurial company? And I think we are. Christine did a great job talking about how we are with wellness offerings that Humana brought about. So there's no doubt about it. We have innovative products and we have people willing to do innovation, to be creative. How do we continue that? The way I see it, a lot of this comes down to three main things: strategy, knowledge, and culture. Some people want to start with strategy and say, oh, well, we can dictate from on high that we're going to be entrepreneurial. But realistically, you need a culture and internal knowledge and talent that supports a strategy like that. Similarly, you can't start with culture and you can't start with knowledge because at the end, they're all really interdependent. So how do we approach this situation where we can take into account all of them at the same time? Space. This is what I want you to take away from my presentation today. Is what follows here. There are 4 things I'm going to talk about. Personal space, professional space, physical space, and virtual space. For personal space, I'm going to talk about empowerment. If you are a leader and you're empowered to do so, you need to give your employees, your associates, unstructured time to pursue creation activities. Right? Time away from their normal work to think, to de-stress. Not everything can be a deadline. Not every project is a fire, even though frequently we want us to see it that way and say, no, we're in a rush, we gotta get this done, we gotta get this done. That's not true. Humana is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's been around a long time and we want it to be around a long time. We have to make sure that we approach a lot of our endeavors with that in mind. Again, with personal space is empowering others. It doesn't help if you want to micromanage everything that your associates do. You have to be willing to let them succeed and fail on their own terms, offer advice, sure. But you shouldn't be nitpicking about every little thing they do. You should be guiding them, growing them, and spend most of your time really focusing on strategy and direction. Let the associates do what they should know how to do. Let them learn and grow. Going with that, in the last part of your personal space, is be empowered. It takes more than just your leader giving you the authority to control your projects. You need to be willing to accept that responsibility and show that you're willing to accept that responsibility so that your leaders know that you trust and rely on them. Second, professional space. You need to give people the space to fail and succeed. Recently, in the last slide, I was talking about how we reward employees. We say, you did something great, here's money. You don't say, you tried something really, really challenging and you failed, here's money. It would be nice if we did that, but we don't. The professional space idea is saying we need to allow people to fail in a way that they don't think will negatively affect their careers. And part of the way we do that is reward them for failure. Some innovative companies reward people not just based off of successful ideas, but also bad ideas. One company in particular, linking on the name, they have the equivalent of a #1 loser award. You failed, but you failed spectacularly. I like to think about it in terms of there's a great race that takes place every year in South Africa called the Comrades Run. Oldest run ultra marathon in the world, maybe second, pretty sure it's oldest. And you have a 12-hour time limit. Anybody who finishes over 12 hours did not do the Comrades Run. It doesn't matter if they did in 12 hours and 30 minutes, 12 hours and 10 minutes, 12 hours and 1 second. If you didn't cross that finish line before the 12-hour mark, you did not finish the Comrades Run. You would think that would be discouraging for some people because it's kind of like saying we only reward you for success. But there's an interesting thing. The first person across that finish line after the 12 hours is expired is essentially a hero. They get interviewed by everybody, they get a ton of publicity and celebrity for at least a short period of time because culturally they want to make sure people understand that it's okay to fail as long as you try. Okay, so we talked about personal and professional space. Third, physical space. It is important how we arrange ourselves physically, even if we don't mean it to be. The structure of an organization, say a tall building, is reflective of the organizational structure, say siloed finance department, siloed analytics department, siloed wellness department, whatever the case may be. I'm sorry, but I'm hesitant to go up the floor to talk to somebody. I'm hesitant to go down the floor to talk to somebody. If they're next to me, I will talk to them, and hopefully they'll be able to help me solve my problems. So it's important that we take this into account when we say, and the deck's actually really good about this, so I'm preaching to the choir to some degree, but not everybody here is from the deck. It's important that we arrange ourselves in a way that encourages collaboration. Finally, virtual space. And this might not be as important as some people initially think. I think it's tremendously important. Roughly a third of Humana employees work from home full time, right? A lot of them teleconference in, might not see them. I know I work with somebody, I have no idea what they look like. And maybe that's not important for me to know what somebody looks like. But I do like to see somebody's body language when I'm talking to them. I think that's important. And certainly she's hesitant to reach out to me when she has a problem. There's a delay, a significant delay. I'm not discouraging people from working from home. I'm not saying we should move away from that. I know Aetna was doing that. What I'm saying is be intelligent in your approach to how you work with remote employees. A lot of us think that it should just come naturally. We should know how to work with people remotely. We're all technologically savvy. That's not the case. We have to learn how to do it, which means we have to go out and find the resources that teach us how to be more effective in dealing with remote employees. So that's pretty much all of my talking points today. Just do a quick review. First, I started off by defining corporate entrepreneurship as a combination of innovation, accepting risk, and creating new business. I then went on to talk about why it's so very, very important that companies continue to be entrepreneurial, not just innovative, but entrepreneurial. I then talked about Humana and how we fall into that paradigm. And then finally, talked about some ways in which we can all improve. Hopefully, all the managers and associates will be able to take this as a jumping off point to think about what we can impact for their own personal lives. I'll now go ahead and open up the floor to any questions.
So what resources have you found to help people learn how to remote work?
There are a lot of online courses. For instance, now, LinkedIn owns them now. It's not Pluralsight or Udemy. Anybody knows the name? Will pick it up?
Is it Brainshark?
Linda, thank you. Linda has plenty of educational videos on how to effectively work with remote teams. There's also a lot of information, project management style, on working with remote teams, and that's what has motivated a lot of the, I don't want to say research, but focus point on how can we be more effective working with remote teams. So I'd suggest looking at Linda. I think Pluralsight might have some videos as well, and that's a resource that Humana offers all of its associates. If you reach out to IT Learn's services, they'll be able to hook you up with an account. And finally, I don't know for sure, but I wager there are resources on most 24/7, which is, again, a resource offer.
Just to add on to some of the resources, we do a regular, IT Learning Services does a program called Share What You Know, and Courtney Posey regularly does a work at home virtual collaboration piece, which people tend to love. I think she's actually going to be reprising that next week at IT Learning Week. Skillsoft has a lot of resources as well. I do just want to say real site licenses are limited, so get us up quick.
Teresa? All right, if there are no more questions?
Hi, my name's Chris. Quick question, are you aware of any studies that point to a tendency for people to see themselves as more risk allowing in the future? Like as they're imagining their future self, their future organization, they're thinking like, yeah, we'll accept more risk then, but now we're very cautious, a lot of uncertainty, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I think a valid point. So I can't cite the research, and it's not in the entrepreneurial context, but I'm guessing your motivation for that question was there are studies out there more generally that, especially related to youth, that suggest when we look into the future, we don't really understand what we can lose as much. So we do envision ourselves to be more risk-taking. I'm not sure how the questions were phrased on the survey that was sent out that generated that report. So I don't know if it was susceptible to that kind of bias, but it's possible. All the same, I think it's important that we should be risk on.
So, do you know, is there a process that we have here if someone has an idea, hey, I've got this, we have a good idea, is it something you can take to your manager, then director, then VP, and then create a PowerPoint and it goes nowhere? Or do we have like a formal process where you can submit it for someone to actually review, people to be in a position to do things like funding?
You know, that's a great question, and I don't have an answer to it. I'm sorry. Part of that is I'm relatively new to Humana, and so I'm not aware of all the resources that we offer employees. But I do know we have an innovation center that can assist people with product innovation at the very least. I'm not sure if they're in the same vein as entrepreneurial endeavors or starting a new business. One of the important things, if you do want to start a new business, you'd likely be creating some sort of business proposal. And there are resources, certainly on Skillsoft and Books 24/7 that would help somebody do that. And at least have an initial proposal bring to their manager to say, hey, I have this idea, what's your take on it? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean if your manager says no, that you end it there. And part of being entrepreneurial as an individual means to some degree not taking more from answers. But ultimately, I don't know. Is anybody in the room there?
Well, I have a question for you, but there is the One Ideas contest that they kind of regularly let people go submit ideas and someone wins and they go through with it. So that's kind of a formal thing. But I was wondering, in the course of your learning at U of L and working with the professors, did you learn about any resources that a manager could use to help inspire their reports to innovate and be creative, or games or framework to help kind of generate that?
Yes, that was actually topic of conversation for probably like 2 straight weeks in one of the courses I took, was how do we inspire the people that report to us to be innovative in their thinking. And a lot of it, I try to get the spirit into the spaces that I was talking about. You want to make sure that if you can back up your encouragement, right? So if they do work really hard on an idea, that you can help make sure it goes somewhere. That they're going to be rewarded for that effort, even if it doesn't ultimately succeed. For idea generation, there are certainly a lot of brainstorming activities that individuals can take on. Or that as a team leader, you'd be able to sit them down into a room, brainstorm activities. As I'm sure everybody in this room is familiar with brainstorming, so I'm not going to go into it. But yeah, one of the caveats is trust is important, right? So if you encourage your team to be entrepreneurial and they legitimately try and they don't have a positive experience with it, perhaps because from on high it gets squashed or a lot of reasons, they're not going to try it again. They're much less likely to try it again. So you got to be careful not to burn that bridge. It flows back into the strategy, culture, and knowledge part, right? The culture has to support it. So it's hard to have just one team that's entrepreneurial in the same space as other teams that aren't entrepreneurial. entrepreneurial. It's certainly possible. You have to make sure that you have a distinct team culture, if that's something that you're trying to pursue.
Can you kind of tell us the differences between entrepreneur and entrepreneur? Because I see kind of a correlation with corporate entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. Is that something that you could answer?
They are synonyms. Corporate entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship are the same thing. Now, academically, some people will try and define them separately, but frequently that's not the case in certain academic texts. And that's the problem with a lot of statements which are defined in research realm, right? You can define things a lot of different ways, but they're generally the same thing. For this presentation,
so if you work in a setting, Humana has strong commitment to compliance and governance in the Medicare area. So you get definite tension between being entrepreneurial and then within, 3 feet behind the line of what, that kind of risk taking.
right. So that's a great cause for concern. Humana works in a space or in a realm that's kind of bureaucratic, right? We do insurance primarily. But even within that space, we're able to find new endeavors. And the wellness program is a great example where it doesn't have the same restrictive regulations. Now, product innovation, say you work in auditing or finance, obviously you might not be able to create a new business out of auditing, which is part of the reason this focus might talk a little bit more on creating a new business venture within an organization as opposed to just a new process. And not everybody is in a position where necessarily they have a lot of opportunities to do something like that. In that case, it's even more important that there be time specifically allocated away from normal business activities for them to think about something that they can do as a business for Humana. Again, this is just to reiterate, not just saying a new product, an entire new business is the hope. Probably not sufficiently to answer your question, but ultimately there's a tightrope you have to walk. You don't always have the freedom to pursue the activities you want to pursue. But you're trying to break out from that, and hopefully you can succeed. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Video of your talk will be up on our website, humana.io, within a few days, and we'll see you all next week.